so wonderful to see all of you and basically to thank all of you for being here. And unfortunately, as you see, Tyler was unable to attend today because of his back, and I'm glad he listened to his physical therapist. I just want to acknowledge this wonderful book. And if the writers who are here today, I know that Sarah and Lee and Valerie are here, but I'm not sure who else. Can you stand? Those of you who are part of the book. Good. Good. Okay. Thank you all for being here. It's just an amazing moment for me. I know we have to stay on target, and I know I'm an organizer, so I stay on time. So I'd like to, first of all, just acknowledge the beauty of my dear friend, Coreen. One of the important moments that I've spent the past day and a half here, and noticed that hope was a signifier for many of the talks today and yesterday. And as Brian Stevenson said, we cannot forget love, and we cannot forget to love. And that's what we learned from Carrie May's experience yesterday, that love and family stories connects us all. And how do we concern ourselves with history, but also how do we think about history? And I'd like to just read a quote by Maud Salter. And she says that as a Black woman, every act is a personal act. Every act is a political act. As a Black woman, the personal is political, has no empty rhetoric. And that really means a lot, no empty rhetoric, because it's political. And then Rujeko Hockley, who were also a part of this book, she says, the cameo says it all. I'm a Black woman with a powerful presence, and I celebrate that fact. I am not to be overlooked, underestimated, or trifled. And that's something...
Trifled with.
Yes, and that's something to be trifled with. And that's something that we see in the work of Coreen. And then Ewald says, her lens didn't just capture fashion or faces. It bore witness to a revolution of identity, one that demanded recognition and its complexity and humanity. And it looks like a story of survival, ingenuity, and unyielding spirit. When we think about this work, we understand how essential it is about Black portraitures and how we begin to think and center the frame of the image through Coreen's work. So Coreen, my first point that I'd like to ask is, so your work reminds us that style is not just surface, it is also political. So can you talk to us about how this works in your history of making images?
Well, I'm very impressed with people that have their own personal style. And I think that stems from when I was a child and I grew up in the foster care system in New York City. And I think I've told the story a million times, but I think it really affects my work. My parents couldn't raise us, interracial marriage that did not work, unfortunately. And this was in the 40s. I was born in 1942. So we know how far away that was, 83 years ago. So interracial marriages probably were a big no-no at the time. So my parents, unfortunately, their marriage didn't work. And my mother went back to her people. And my father was left with taking care of us, which he probably could not do, because I remember when the police department came to take us out of the home and we were placed in an orphanage. And how I bring that up, why I bring it up, is because we didn't have our own clothes. We had, all the kids in the orphanage had none of their own personal clothing. So when we would go out to take walks, we went to a community closet and we would pick out whatever would fit us. That struck me, because where are my clothes? Where are my toys? Where, that's what happens when you're a kid. So as I grew up, I realized the importance of self-presentation and self-presentation and the fact of resistance against whatever you want to resist against, how you look. And then I remember talking with Muhammad Ali when I had that experience of spending the whole night with him after the Ken Norton fight, and I told him, sometimes I have a problem getting into events, and he said, oh, girl, you just need to get yourself a mink coat. Really? And I think he understood presentation, because he said, nobody will mess with you. Get yourself a mink coat. And I came home and told my partner at the time, George Mingo, who was an artist, sculptor, and painter. And he said, oh, that's very interesting. So when he sold a painting for $4,500, he brought me all the money and laid it on the table in front of my kids. It was so endearing, and he laid it there with all the cash, and my son's eyes bulged out of his head because he had never seen all that money in one place. And he told me, go get yourself a mink coat. Of course, I didn't do that because I had to pay bills. I said, mink coat, are you kidding me? You know. So anyway, I think, you know, Muhammad Ali knew about that. And I sat with him in his hotel room after the fight. I was so lucky. It just happened by accident. It wasn't even planned. And I sat with him on the bed he said, he's a doctor. He's the head of the Ford Foundation, or whoever the people were. This one is a doctor. She's a therapist. And he was very proud of all the fans he had and how important they were in life. And they were all very beautifully dressed. And, you know, that made an impression with him, too. He was very happy about that. So I think I say I've never considered myself a fashion photographer, even though I covered fashion in Paris and New York for many years. But I considered myself more a documentary photographer. So I'm documenting an event. It could be any kind of event. So people align me with fashion because I covered fashion. But, you know. Anyway, I hope that helps with.
It did.
Okay.
It's a wonderful answer because Anna Maria Horsford, I saw her last week, and she says, George Mingo loved Carrie Mae Weems, Coreen Simpson.
Yeah, he loved you too.
Right. But she said that, and then hearing that story, it is so endearing to think about how important it is that when your partner respects the dream and also focus on translating the idea of representation. Mm-hmm. When we think about representation, I also think about space and what Bill Cunningham offered you in the opportunity with fashion. Can you talk about that?
Well, Bill Cunningham was so great. He was one of the great photographers of the New York Times. And I used to see him all the time riding his bicycle along New York. And he used to always stick me in the New York Times. He said, stand there, child. Let me tell you, in the Flower District. He said, yeah, I got to take a picture of this. You stand there. He would put me in the New York Times all the time. And then he put me in the section for socialites. And I thought, wow, the dress I had on was from a thrift shop. And I just put some boa feathers on the sleeves to make it up, to snazz it up a bit. And I said, look at me in the society pages. I ain't no damn society woman, but you know, that's how people would see you. But Bill was so good. Like one time he told me, I'll never forget this, we were at an event and I said, oh, they have open bar, Bill. They have open bar and they have food too. And he said, I never touch any food or any drink when I'm on an assignment. I said, what? But he was like a monk when it came to his work. You know, he was very professional about that. But the rest of us, you know, we were guzzling it up and whatever we were doing. I mean, I took some of the things he said to heart. I loved Bill so much, so much. He was just one of the greatest photographers, really. Street photographers, fantastic.
So when thinking about following up on the idea of fashion and also publications and representation, the importance of this book, as we see in the titles, as we think about the titles of the writers who basically transform what it meant to consider ways to your work. We have titles from Harlem Studio Portraits to Aesthetics of Defiance, Pictures in My Mind. So these moments that you style as a political statement through Sarah Lewis, but also the aspect of experimentation. Can you talk about your experimental work with your portraits?
how that got started, really. Oh, we have it right in front. I didn't realize this was sitting here. Yeah, I think I was not feeling well. I had to, after serving an internship, Jamaica Art Center or something, and I had a lot of work prints. You know how when you're working in the darkroom, which I really loved working in the darkroom. I really missed the darkroom too. But I had a lot of work prints. And I said, what am I going to do with these work prints? And I wanted to work. I wanted to do something, but I couldn't go outside because I wasn't feeling so good at that. I had the flu or something. So I just started cutting up the work prints to rework them and make something new, because I wanted to, instead of taking the photograph, try making a photograph, which is entirely different.
Well, that's the story that we're also thinking about, reinvention.
Yeah,
and that's what
reinvention.
important your work is.
And I learned that in jewelry design too, because I also have a career as a designer, which was just starting out making one-of-a-kind pieces for my friends, and then it developed into a career almost, because people would say, where'd you get that from? Who made that? And then I started getting press from various magazines, and they put my work in the magazines. And I remember going to Bill Cunningham, the New York Times photographer, and saying, I want to be a part of the council of all the designers in New York. And he said, oh, child, you don't need that. That's how people talk. You don't need to be a part of that. He said, just keep working, because he was also, you know how many photographers are also people who work in other mediums too. I didn't know that Robert Mapplethorpe made jewelry until recently.
I didn't either.
I never knew that.
Right.
And a lot of photographers are also musicians. They have a lot of different talents, photographers. And I think because it's almost the same thing. Photography is about balance, color. You know, the same things that go into taking a good photograph go into play when you're making a piece of jewelry or creating a piece of art, visual art.
Can you also talk about Richard Avedon's effect on your work in terms of the civil rights movement?
Well, I just liked how he just set up studios and went out into like Texas and all those places taking pictures of these rough and ready, fabulous people. And, you know, I have his books at home. And that came to me when we were doing the video for Aperture. I don't know why his name popped right into my head, because I liked the seriousness of his portraiture. And he was dignifying, giving justice and vision, his vision, and elevating the subject with his justice with the lens, and how fabulous they were. So that always deeply impressed me. And I said, you know, when I was looking at the young hip-hop people, young men and young women, all I saw were photographs of them spinning around and doing blah, 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 blah. You know, and I was thinking, well, there must be more to hip-hop than that. And I saw this young, beautiful man on the subway, and I just went over to him and introduced myself to him. I said, I just love what you're wearing. That is so beautiful. Would you come to my studio? And he did, and he brought a friend who was even more fabulous than he was. And I was kind of nervous, because I was thinking to myself, you don't really know these guys, you know. No one really introduced. They were so sweet, so nice. And, you know, they're in the, Roe Richards in the book, one of my favorite photographs of him. And I guess he reminded me of my father, my biological father, because I remember when he used to visit us in the foster home, he was very, very dark. And I didn't realize my father was that dark, because I didn't see anybody that dark in my life. My mother was white, my father was black, and he was really black and beautiful. So I'm very happy that there's a dark-skinned black man on the cover, because it's almost bringing me to give honor to my biological father. You know what I mean? Yeah, because that's how he looked to me.
One last question, that just to think about storytelling. Your portraits tell multiple stories, and just beautiful stories, some difficult, but the fact that you enhance us about what it means to be a photographer and a storyteller. Do you want to just share just a moment of some of the archives that you've shared when you talk about face, in the work About Face? That series? So as you say, you were creating my own language. You created your own language in photography.
Yeah, I was trying to do that for many, many years. Like, what is my language? Am I all over the place? And I was wondering about the book, too. Is it going to be all over the place? You know, what's going on here? You know, that's what that bothered me a lot. And when I talked to Sarah Meister, who's the head of Aperture, and I thank her very much, along with you, Dr. Deb Willis, who really is my fairy godmother in photography. Really. Then the reason I say that is because she kept my work in the forefront in every one of her books. I mean, by just including me in the book, not putting it on the cover or anything, which she did one time. But I was in the book, and she was always cementing me in the pantheon of, you know, photography and so forth. So I give a lot of love and honor and respect to you, Deb, because you did that for me, and I'll never forget it. And Sarah Lewis, who's just fabulous, there she is. Without Sarah, probably I'm the second subject of her great series, Vision and Justice, and I do appreciate so much Sarah for including me in there. And I got to see it while I was alive and not when I was dead and gone.
And that's why this book is significant, is because this is her first monograph. And it's unbelievable that this is the first monograph. And we have 4 minutes left. And
we got to talk about your book.
I want to share it. Can we move on to just a few of the slides from mine? I can't seem to move. Okay, so here's Reflection. It's November 4th. It's the release date, the launch date, where there's an exhibition now at NYU at the Center for Black Visual Culture, as well as Tisch. This is a portrait of Maud Salter on the cover holding a daguerreotype case. So we think about centering the frame. These are some of the publications I've worked on over the years, and to share that moment, but also to think about the work of women on the cover. These are some of the images, and I'm going to flip through. It seems like there's a drag, and some of the exhibitions that I worked on. This is my first photograph I took when I was an undergraduate student in Philadelphia. South Philly, thinking about family and connections and looking out the window, protection and moments from that period, from women to men looking at family. But there are early photographers that I'm just going to flip through, from Augustus Washington to J.P. Ball. There's a portrait of J.P. Ball, and with Frederick Douglass, as we honor this moment of discussions. But the photographers who lived through my life were J.P. Ball, as well as the Goodrich brothers. And these are moments that are rarely discussed in our history books. And I have some of my students are here, and I'm excited to think about the research I did when I was their age in undergraduate school. And this is C.M. Batty, who created the photography department at Tuskegee Institute. Self-portrait, and he's creating a bust and a monument for Booker T. Washington. Movies, and we never think about movie nights and play and the work of early Black photographers. We see the play in Coreen's work, and it's really essential to think about portraiture, play, stories such as this one by Arthur Badeau, who is capturing Marcus Garvey as he is deported. And so just ways of thinking of women's businesses, moments of photography, this is just wonderful Gladys Bentley, style and moments. Family pictures. I wanted to make sure that Black women were early on, documenting their photography early on. And these are just ways of looking, ways of seeing Black families, from collections to personal collections to Vanderzee, as we all know that you also worked as a curator for the Institute. And just political moments of the Double V campaign. Of course, Gordon is central to all of us. Morgan and Marvin Smith. Just to imagine Martin Luther King on the beach in Atlantic City being photographed. We don't see enough of play and rest. And that's something that Joan Morgan, who is the director of the center, is organizing and making sure that rest is central to our discussions. You know, Kwame's work in the 60s, Gordon again, you know, just ways of thinking of political moments. And we saw Doug Harris's work yesterday. And so these are some of the images from the book. And how do we think about Black life through politics, through justice, through storytelling, through, you know, also with Malcolm teaching a class at the Natural History Museum. And here we are. And I'm going to stop here as we're on time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That went fast.